Welcome to the Horsemouth podcast. It's my excuse to meet fascinating people and learn how they approach work, creativity, and problem solving. My guest today is a Mumbai based screenwriter and assistant director, best known for series and films like Amazon Prime's Modern Love Mumbai, Netflix's Scoop, Faraaz, The Buckingham Murders, and the hugely anticipated upcoming drama series by Hansal Mehta titled Gandhi. A former film critic and journalist, he served as the entertainment editor of HuffPost India. He frequently contributes to GQ, The Hindu, The Quint, The Times of India, and in the past has written for publications like The Wall Street Journal, People Magazine, CNN IBN, Hindustan Times, and Rediff. For nearly a decade, he worked on investigative stories and authored profiles on writers, actors, and filmmakers. He's also hosted and moderated panels on cinema and literature and interviewed some of the biggest names in the film industry. He's also taught a film appreciation course at Mumbai University, participated in a critics workshop at the Talent Press of the Berlin Film Festival, served on the Young Critics jury of the Mumbai Film Festival, and covered the Locarno Film Festival in Switzerland. He's also co directed a short documentary film and a segment for Google's India in a Day project, produced by Ridley Scott and Anurag Kashyap. This afternoon, however, this protean personality, this passionate champion of the theatrical adventure, has accidentally agreed to be on my silly little podcast. I intend to pick his brains on his writing process, his approach to storytelling, and our shared love for walking around the streets of London. To keep up with his brilliant work, please follow him on X and Instagram at AK Talkies. And now, please enjoy my conversation with Ankur Pathak. What should I call you? Like a screenwriter, a director?
Screenwriter and assistant director.
Okay.
I mean, them being the facts, yeah.
Okay, great, perfect. Okay, all right. So, Ankur, we are obviously going to talk about you turning a a director, assistant director, a writer from being a film critic. That's a
Yeah.
big switch of your career because you were a very well respected, renowned film critic for I think a decade plus.
I think a little lesser than that. Like, I'm 31 now. I started around 21. So, yeah.
Okay, so that's obviously a big switch, and we'll get to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to you about the other big switch of your career, which is from chartered accountancy to journalism. How did that happen?
How do you know all this? I don't remember volunteering this sort of an information. Nothing here. It's not really a very dramatic sob story because, unlike most Indian parents, my parents aren't oppressive and they like, and they wholeheartedly support dreams and allow you to like make mistakes and like learn from it. And which is weird because that was disappointing for me, right? Like you want when there
You
is
wanted the drama.
yeah, when there's that like spirit of teenage rebellion, you want to like be up against something, and they're like, oh, you don't have a problem with this.
Yeah.
So they're both writers actually. They've both been journalists. My dad was with the Times of India, and my mother was the program director at All India Radio.
Oh, wow.
So generally, we grew up in a very arts friendly environment with a lot of like cinema and literature and books and theater. Like it wasn't something that we did once in a while. It was quite ingrained into the daily life. Like it was almost like a ritual to watch a movie every Friday, no matter what movie released.
This was at the Regal Theatre?
This was at Regal, usually at Regal, at Excelsior, at Liberty, at Eros. Uh, like most of those old South Bombay theaters, some of them haven't survived yet. Some of them have become multiplexes. But yeah, a lot of like English films. I remember my first film experience was actually Titanic. That's the first film I ever saw. I remember it very distinctly. I must be 6 or 5. But that sort of like defined to me what movies were supposed to be like. They were supposed to be these big tentpole summer blockbuster
Yeah.
aesthetic. So yeah, I grew up like very much in sync with these cultural forces, right? That for a lot of people in a lot of households, that when I speak to my friends, something that is almost looked down upon sometimes, or it's something that ruins you, or you're somehow like your education and your academic growth is somehow seen as uh, if you follow these things, then it's seen as a threat to your academic growth, which wasn't the case at home. So like this CA journey was purely self-inflicted pain. Like when you're sort of negotiating after your 12th boards in Bombay, you go to college after 10th, and the first 2 years are just a lot of fun because you're not in school anymore, and there's a lot more freedom. So I think I just got like caught up in other people doing this, like commerce students go and become CA. So I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be like a rite of passage. And I mean, one other problem of being a woke parent is that they don't even tell you that, this is a stupid thing to do. Like nobody in the family has become an accountant or a doctor or an engineer. We are not those people. But they're like, maybe, this is what his calling is. But like in 6 months, one realized it wasn't the calling that you thought it was. It was insufferable. I look at CAs, working CAs now, and I feel like they have a very miserable life. I don't know how they manage to like do all the number crunching and go home satisfied that wow, I caught that one little error. I'm guessing people find meaning in what they do. It's not fair to like mock it. And it's a lot of hard work, and some people are passionate about these things. But to me, it was a very quick realization. Yeah, like maybe a year into learning it, and I just couldn't like I was literally Darshil from Tare Zameen Par, that nothing made sense only. I'm like, कर चल क्या रहा है? क्या बोल रहा है ये professor? मतलब what? I was that lost. I wasn't even like, okay, I'll figure it out in a few months. And around the same, sorry, go on.
No, you please say something. Complete your thought.
No, it's very weird because how like even in this drama, it was like cinema that kind of showed the way. Because Three Idiots released, and I mean I was gobsmacked because it was like really speaking
to you.
Kind of the trauma that I was going through. It was verbalizing that like the whole Sharman Joshi track or Madhavan track where like follow excellence and whatever. In hindsight, it feels a bit too on the nose. But at that time, for that little boy of 16, 17 feeling lost and then like finding validation, thinking that, oh, this can be a route, and maybe, who am I, what am I proving? Who do I need to prove to? There's nobody. And like, touch wood, and I'll always acknowledge this, there was always like enough privilege for you to even experiment with what you want to do, right?
Think about it.
Yeah, like sometimes you don't factor that in. The fact that a lot of people are able to pursue their passion is because there's no rent money to worry about.
Right. Of
right?
course.
So I think that sort of like cushioning, the emotional support, the fact that they were both journalists. So like when I told them, like,
and just by like the virtue of growing up in Bombay
and the proximity to like media and films, and that being my elder sister had started working as a model, so I was kind of like a weird anomaly who then somehow like was like tumko bhi
got back to track.
yahi karna hai. So like my first job at Mumbai Mirror, actually, I mean, it's literally the Times of India building is still the same. It was where my father worked.
Oh wow.
Right, so I literally ended up in like that floor where Mumbai Mirror was, is where Dharmyug magazine एक 90s में आती थी, Hindi magazine.
Okay.
It was very, very, it was almost like the New Yorker of India. It was highly celebrated. It had like really good short stories, poems, and all of that.
Oh wow.
It shut down, but if you look it up, you'll find a lot of like details about it.
Okay.
So Dhanveer Bharti, he was the editor of Dharmyug, actually, like the renowned Hindi writer. So
okay, I've never heard of this. I mean, I'm disappointed, but okay.
So yeah, I ended up basically at where my father left off.
Like a complete full circle.
Yeah. Very predictable also.
Okay, so now you start doing film criticism. That is like your first step into the entertainment or the Bollywood.
No, not at all. Actually, I was 21, straight out of like journalism school. I studied at Jai Hind in
Okay.
uh, in Churchgate Jain College. I did BMM
Okay.
like everybody else at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So the first job, you're just a beat reporter. Yeah, I wanted to write about films because I used to love watching films and discussing and decoding films so much with like my gang, with my Bunty Pintos of colony, that I figured कि like I need to figure a way to like get paid for this.
Hmm.
कि मतलब काम ही ये हो कि पिक्चर
Hmm.
देखने के पैसे मिले, पिक्चर के बारे में लिखने के पैसे मिले. I was very smitten by the Hindi film industry. Like
Hmm.
I absolutely was so taken by this. I mean, it is La La Land for me. Like this city and like what it makes possible for you, and how it has also defined those films that you watched growing up have defined like moments in your life, right? Like
Hmm.
you think of an old song from like 2002 and then you remember of like that one heartbreak that you had, like so they become like these markers of your own
Yeah.
life. So
Milestones. Yeah.
yeah, so I was desperate to just be a part of it, that I want to do this. Like
Hmm.
I knew it then. I knew it then at 21 that I want to write and make films. So to me, even being a journalist was to sort of like have access to the industry.
So you knew that you wanted to be a director.
I just would read a lot of interviews, and I was always fascinated by how generally, like in the spectrum of many components that make a film possible,
Hmm.
the directors obviously they sound a lot more intelligent, insightful. There is an editorial opinion on the way of the world,
Yeah.
right, which somehow comes
Mm-hmm.
through the language of films.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always wanting that, but obviously at that level there is fear. To maybe it was just a piped dream at the time. Because at 21 you're very young. You're like
Yeah.
really young, right? So just writing for a tabloid, Mumbai Mirror, which was, see, this is also like pre-Instagram, pre-Twitter,
Yeah.
pre-anything, right? So like the value of the written word
Was a lot.
in a newspaper was commendable. Like because of the deterioration in our media culture, it has been so rapid. The decline of just the faith people have in institution,
Hmm.
that we forget how much we valued it in the first place.
Yeah.
So then my job at Mumbai Mirror was not of a film critic. To answer your main question, I was a gossip reporter. I used to contribute to the blind items
Hmm.
on the page 2, which was basically the page 3, metaphorically.
Hmm.
And my brief was clear. Yeah, like one of the editors I remember told me, I used to obviously love independent cinema, because by now I had covered, I'd gone to Locarno, I'd gone to Berlin. I loved film festivals.
Hmm.
So I would try to sort of sneak in like an indie story. This is also getting made with this actor, and this one's won at this festival. And one day my editor got really fed up with this activism
Hmm.
for the underdogs, and she actually came to me and said, Ankur, you work for Mumbai Mirror. Your brief is who's fucking with who and who's fighting with who. That's all that we want. That's the job. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'll
Sure.
get you
Sure.
something.
Yeah. I have to kill my cinephile.
Yeah. But that's the thing with me. Like, I think that's with a lot of like people that I work now in the industry, especially directors, or generally smart people, okay? Like, and you do encounter really intelligent people across board. I think smart people love gossip. They love gossiping. It's one thing that they're
Like a
really,
guilty pleasure.
in a way, I think it's one of those to like gab din aur kya ho raha hai? And I'm like, yeah. So by the way, ye chal raha hai. Pata hai? Uska ye ho raha hai. So my cinephilia and my love for gossip and tabloid journalism sort of coexisted. It's a weird mesh, because people think if you like, you're watching like some 7-hour long Turkish film of some filmmaker, then you don't have the appetite for like gup, right? Like it's almost seen as they're in opposition, but
they can coexist.
They do coexist, I think. Like
in fact, you said in your Talent Press article, you said that, I'm just taking an excerpt out of it. You said that in India, film criticism in its strictest definition doesn't adequately exist. Only film reviewing does. What is the meaning? What is the difference between that?
I think that at the time came from, I don't think much has changed, is that like a film review sort of like minimizes what criticism actually is, right? Like a review, if you read in most papers and websites even now, and this I was talking in 2012, it's just an extended synopsis of
Hmm.
what the so-called
Story
reviewer
is.
has watched. There is hardly an element of subjectivity to it, or there is
Hmm.
hardly a deeper attempt at analyzing, oh, the performances are weak, but it's balanced by the rousing background score. Those are empty, hollow sentences, right? What
Hmm.
does that mean? Like, you have to sort of back that argument with why is that performance weak?
Hmm.
What about the performance feels inadequate to you? Or why does it need rousing compensation from the background score? Like, that's not how scenes or films are designed. So, I was saying that, in terms of like the more forceful, analytical criticism that you see in a lot of like European
Hmm.
publications or in the West, in India, it's very superficial and cursory. There are very few people who get to the heart of critiquing a film.
Hmm. So, speaking of the craft of making a scene or building a scene, now you're on the other side of the
Hmm.
screen. So, you must be observing that closely. So,
Yeah.
now you've joined the Mehtaverse, right?
Yeah.
So, is there something that you've discovered now that has perhaps changed your opinion? The film critic has had to like bow to the filmmaker.
it, it has been very humbling to say the least, because I mean, yeah, like, you of course respect opinion about your work, about somebody else's work, but, and I don't know, I'll probably get lynched for saying it, but it there is insane amount of effort and hard work and blood, sweat, soul that goes. I mean, it's a miracle a movie gets made in this
Hmm.
town or a series gets made, right? Like, you're literally every day at war with like forces that you prepare for and with forces that are beyond your control, like, like weather, lighting, this, that. So I do feel that I mean, I think so. Then what the perspective that I got after coming to this side about criticism is that when it's vacant and empty and motivated, it does a lot of damage, and it's not in good faith.
Hmm.
So, the person doing it, I feel that, why? I mean, you're then doing a job for a salary, and I don't even blame individual players. I feel like the media ecosystem is such that if you're attached to a certain legacy brand or a new brand, then you're ultimately towing the line of their larger commercial interests,
Hmm.
right? I mean, like, Mumbai
Okay.
Mirror was a big example of it. Like, the Times Group is an extremely compromised group in terms of what they're able to publish and what they can't,
Hmm.
because they have an award show, because they have a radio channel to run, because they have like a news channel, because they have like other programs in Delhi where they want a star to come, and if they give like 2 stars less, then the star might not show up.
Hmm.
So, I do get the forces that like make a critic like restricted to what they are able to say or they're not able to say. Uh, but yeah, having read my own previous reviews, I do feel that, oh, I wish I was kinder and
Yeah.
nicer.
Okay. So now we'll have to jump ahead from your
Yeah.
criticism to your writing
Hmm.
projects rather.
Yeah.
Um, so I would like to first come to Modern Love Mumbai.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think I need to congratulate you on this. I'm sure you must have heard a lot of accolades and congratulations for that. So think of me adding to it without saying anything. Um, you are writing for characters of different identities than
Yeah.
yourself. You're writing for a
Yeah.
Muslim homosexual man.
Yeah.
Uh, did was that heavy on you as a writer? Did you did you chase authenticity in that?
The goal obviously is to chase authenticity and make it as real as the person is in the universe, the world that you've created, and it's obvious that you will be restricted by 20 things, because otherwise you'd only be writing about yourself and the life you've lived. Like, the whole job is to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, in a life, in an experience that is not individually or uniquely yours. I think with Bai, which the short was called, it really helped. Like, Hansal's brief, like, he'd written a story and then given it to me to like develop it into a screenplay. He had a broad idea of like, of this boy and like him being closeted and struggling to sort of come to terms with it in front of his grandmother, to his grandmother. So he said that, like, treat him like a straight person. Don't embellish and embed, because that part of the story, the rest of the story is a crisis of his relationship, and so many factors. Like, we want to eventually see queer stories being told without them being like queer, right? Like, without their struggles primarily being of coming out, although this is that story. But just to think of that person and his interest and his music, and how the two men meet, it's very organic. Like, they are not like meeting secretly, or they are not worried about so much about societal judgment as much it is about like an internal conflict.
Yeah.
And like the family within, and like the place where he comes from.
Yeah.
So it is always hard, like, to do, and these things are tricky because, like, as a straight upper caste man, you are probably at the highest or at the topmost pecking order. So you constantly have to make sure that you're like empathizing consciously, you're reading enough, you're talking to enough people, whose experience probably that is. So I think a whole lot of that really helped, and now we do like sensitivity checks. We make something that's been developed by people who may not have that immediate experience. We make others read it for whom it's closer, and it's always evolving and like developing into something more real. So I think that with Model Lab, that helped a lot.
So you mean to say that you actually spoke to, say,
I mean, I have a lot of friends, who are very close to me. So it's not that becomes a close enough proxy to write this. I do feel like if there is, say, this was a short film, but if it's a big writer's room with 6 people, then I do think that the people whose stories you're telling, they need to be able to contribute to it in a certain way. Because otherwise there will be a lot of creative blind spots, and despite your best intention to not, co-opt a certain experience, it's a fallacy. You will not see it.
You're susceptible to a bias coming in.
Yeah, you're very, very susceptible to your biases, and they're very unchecked, subtle biases, right? They're not very...
You wouldn't even realize that you're being...
Yeah. So I think I hope we move towards a place where rooms are more inclusive, sets are more inclusive, where voices that have historically not had the platform and the access to like tell their stories are empowered, instead of us sort of like borrowing their trauma and like selling it for views.
Right. Okay, so I think one of the things that I've observed about your writing, not that I've seen it much on the screen, but more I've read your interviews and your columns. It is very poetic, it is very romantic, it is deeply philosophical, it is melancholic, but it is hopeful. It is a lot of those things. When you are writing dialogues for a short like Bai, that kind of that poetic rhythm kind of comes in, like when I think one of the characters says that प्यार को रोकना भी तो एक I mean I'm misquoting, but something to the effect कि प्यार को रोकना भी तो एक crime जैसा कुछ है. So when you write like that, does it bear heavy on you the fact that this is poetic, but this should also be natural, this should also come off like two people from Bombay talking to each other?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Just two things. One, that line actually came from a co-writer of mine, Raghav. Two
Okay.
co-writers, Raghav and Kashyap, they write together, and
Okay.
who did dialogues. Like the Hindi film industry has this interesting thing where you write the script in English.
Hmm.
Obviously, the screenplay is in English, and usually in most cases you have a dialogue writer who makes it more flavorful and more
Right.
contextual. So like you
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
very closely, and I think after a point, in most cases, it all gets interspersed, so you can't distinguish after a point
Hmm.
who said
Who's done
what,
what?
right?
Yeah.
Because it's English being translated into a finer version in Hindi. But that I specifically remember came from these two brilliant writers, Raghav and Kashyap. And to your second question, I mean, trust me, it boils down to the skills of the director, and that's what I also love the most of being on set, like watching Hansal direct, uh, working closely with actors when the rehearsals are happening, workshops are happening, fine tuning lines as if
Hmm.
sometimes when they say it, when we do a lot of readings before we go on set, and that time you catch it.
Hmm.
You usually catch it that this is sounding a little too excessive. So there is always the room between it's written and when it's shot to sort of,
Hmm.
bridge exactly the gap that you're talking about.
Hmm.
The second is also like a stylistic choice, right? Like the same lines, if it's coming in a Bansali drama, they will sound a lot more melodramatic and like, on a higher note.
Yeah.
But in a Hansal or an Anurag film or an Anubhav Sinha film, it could be the same line, and if it's said with like a very matter of fact, cold way
Yeah.
of saying it,
Irfan Khan style of saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
like just sort of like casually saying it,
Yeah.
it won't sound like the kind of
Out of
poetic.
place. Yeah.
It just doesn't. It's
Hmm.
a lot performance and direction
Hmm.
and feeling correct to the character you've written. Like he, हाँ ये बोलेगा.
Hmm.
I think a great example, a fantastic example for that is Pratik Gandhi in Scam.
Hmm.
He could easily go like an Amitabh Bachchan way where like, he's doing the delivery with a higher pitch,
Yeah.
deeper
Yeah.
baritone.
Yeah. With the
But
hand just like, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but he says it like matter of factly, like it's casual banter in his life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that to you, like you get taken by the character as a result of how easily these lines come to him. So they
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
feel like underlined dialogues, they just
Hmm.
feel
Hmm.
like his voice.
He's not doing the thing of highlighting a certain part or
Yeah.
pushing a certain, delivering it a certain TV way.
Not just TV or like it's a different Bollywood aesthetic which is closer to camp. Like say
Hmm.
Chulbul Pandey in Dabang, right?
Yeah.
Like the way of saying it is so like, oh, now listen to me. Like there is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
dialogue coming,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they will pause so that the audience can clap and they don't miss the second
Yes.
line.
Yes. Yes.
It's timed to that level of
Hmm.
detail.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it boils down to like individual aesthetics.
Hmm. So, since we were talking about working with actors, I remember you were telling me last time when we spoke that you kind of work very closely with the actors as part of your job,
Yeah.
being in the direction team.
Yeah.
So, I actually wanted to ask you that, so I am a theater actor, by the way.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
in theater, the first thing that informs us about our character is the script, and we read a scene and we figure out what must have happened before it, and when
Correct.
we exit the stage, we imagine what would have happened to the character once
Hmm.
they would have left. So a lot of my story, my interpretation is based on what is on paper, right?
Yeah.
So
And what is also not on paper, no?
right,
What
reading
is not
between the
on
lines.
off stage, yeah.
Yes, off stage and on stage. So meaning that the writer is informing my performance.
Yeah.
Do the performances also inform you as a writer?
It happens sometimes when you're still writing, and usually it happens in a series, and then it reaches a point where it's starting to get cast, and then an actor is attached to it, and then when you like do another pass, then it's very hard to separate the voice of the actor playing. So you kind of like embed it with things that this actor is. You play on their strengths in the writing.
Okay.
So
and
there's
so you rewrite the entire thing.
I mean, you would anyway. It's not because, oh my god, a star has come, so you're now rewriting it. At least I haven't experienced, but I've also written very less so far. But you are constantly rewriting, yeah. Like on the set, you're rewriting. It's a false notion कि 90s में script लिखी जाती थी set पे. You still, if you read the Succession screenplays and Jesse Armstrong's forward that says that at 4 a.m. there's a new draft that has gone to the actors, and the shoot is at 7. So it's very commonplace.
That draft includes all the improvisations and ad-libs from the rehearsal that worked?
Yeah. You would usually incorporate it if there's a sudden, great line that has come during improvisation, or sometimes like actors have a tendency to remember things very well. So they know at that beat what they're doing, they have their own notes. So it doesn't have to specifically be documented in that script. But the revisions I'm talking about are usually when the writers and the directors are working together, and just the night before shoot, you will have a look, because you're not reading the whole script. No, you're just reading the scene. So it's 3-4 pages. They're harder to they're easier to sort of move around. You just focus purely on the page that you're shooting next day, and you're never shooting chronologically. So it could be 6th episode ka final scene karna hai. So as a DA, my responsibility would also be, if you've manipulated or changed something in that moment, then I'll have to see how it's affecting the rest of the drama.
The continuity.
And balance it out, yeah. Balance it out elsewhere so that the characters and the world seems consistent.
Okay. So now let's talk about the visual style of a story. There is what I would think is a very obvious ode to Children of Men in Bai, the Emmanuel Lubensky, the classic shot.
Yeah.
Is that something that is on paper written by you, or ye cinematographer?
No. Yeah. It's the director and the director of photography on how they interpreted the references that they take.
Because that flashback doesn't necessarily have any dialogue. So is it entirely a scene added by the director and cinematographer?
No. I obviously wrote it. The riots were there, and him witnessing that trauma contributes to his own marginalization, right? Because there is also a realization that it's not my sexuality that's a problem. Us as people are also not part of the mainstream. So you're almost marginalized within a
already
section.
A subset of marginalization.
Yeah, which to my mind at least, it was a big part of why he remained closeted, because there's a layer of already witnessing some kind of oppression, and then your sexuality is suddenly that much more of a problem. Plus, this was a particularly conservative Muslim household, right? Where everything happens according to by the book, so to say. So this was that was always there, but that's most directors would say this, as does Hansal, that most directors don't like when you direct on paper. That's not your job. You're not writing camera angles or shot breakdowns. So just write the basic emotional beat of it. What do you want here to happen? Bombay's engulfed with riots as a bunch of kids are being wheeled away in their school van. That's it. Kuch nahi likhna ki 50 men come from this side with flames and all. That's for him to interpret, do, sort of create, If I write too much detail there and, one flame comes from here and he's bruised, he'll get very pissed. How do you know where this flame is gonna? तुम लॉजिस्टिक्स में मत घुसो, तुम लिखो, वहां पे तुम्हारा काम खत्म और दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं जिसके लिए ये काम दिया है आगे. तो वो एक्चुअली आसान हो जाता है, प्लस द बिगेस्ट, आई विल टेल यू, बिकॉज़ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस, द बिगेस्ट क्वेश्चन for you to it's not to curtail your imagination, is that first of all you don't know what location the production is gonna get, right? And a director usually works the scene and fits it based on what you eventually get, right?
You don't know the budget also.
Yeah, and that's a big restriction, you could write Swiss Alps में ये हो रहा है, but तुमको मिलेगा गुलमर्ग और मनाली, तो उस लोकेशन के बेसिस पे जो dynamics change होंगे, you have to adapt to that. So it's better to keep your writing as transparent and as clear as possible without weighing it down with too many details.
Okay, so talking about the emotional beats of a scene, this is a question that I had written down actually. Uh, how does one writer, I guess, one writer make a scene emotionally overwhelming? That
Hmm.
how do you achieve that quiet vulnerability in a scene?
See, one, I mean, I'm very new here, Shubhankar, and a lot of these things I'm also
But you've
still
written it, right?
learning.
You've written that in Bai, right?
Yeah, yeah. And like I continue to write other stuff. I mean, I'm just saying a disclaimer that, like, not some crazy expert on
Yeah.
screenwriting, and I've been very, very lucky to be constantly have like much smarter writers to work, to lean in on, to learn from, who make your work better. uh Having said that, to my mind, when you talk about just like a scene being emotionally overwhelming, I don't think ever you pick up any scene that has moved you, it would never be in isolation. It's not the scene that has worked.
Hmm.
It's the series, it's the whole sequence, it's the journey that the character has taken you on that has
Hmm.
led you to this moment where you feel like
Hmm.
so empathetic and so sort of almost experiencing their tragedy, their vulnerability, because you've seen where they've come from, right?
Hmm.
So I think the harder part of what you're asking is to sort of like constantly be able to stack up scenes in a way that when you want that big emotional payoff, it feels earned.
Hmm.
It's very easy to like just
Hmm.
come up with like an emotional moment and like have a character like through exposition you come up with a backstory,
Hmm.
and two people are sitting and talking about, like, one is talking about like how his mother's death really changed him as a person. It won't do much to you if it's just said, but if the preceding beats you've seen how like his mother's death has really like haunted him and he's still grieving, then that moment with his partner where this just comes will connect more seamlessly, that
Hmm.
like he is feeling that void not because she's saying no to him or they're breaking up, but because this is reminding him of another kind of loss, right?
Hmm. But
So
that
to me,
build up and that exposition must be really tricky in a short film format, right?
yeah, yeah, I mean, I really struggled with it because unlike other films, I mean, most of them I really thoroughly enjoyed in the Modern Love Mumbai series. But ours was like it was jumping too many timelines.
Hmm.
Like there was a lot of past weighing on. There was like childhood. In an earlier draft, you had multiple. You saw Manzu grow like multiple years when he's 6, when he's 11, and then when he
Oh.
is the
Hmm.
guy played by Pratik Gandhi.
Hmm.
Uh, as to how this the first time he experiences like a sexual awakening, or before
Hmm.
that, a stray remark that Bai has made, which made him which affected him.
Hmm.
So all of that, because we had a limited window, we had to dial that down quite a bit, and I was very anxious if this
Hmm.
whole the scale of what we are trying to say through this
Hmm.
character, like it was almost like a story of Bombay's trauma also, right? Like
Yeah.
Bombay recovering from its own PTSD of the 90s riots. But it's Hansal, man. It's I can't tell you how much just the mediocrity of a script is elevated by like great direction, if I may say so myself.
What do you think he adds?
I mean everything, and like a lot of it is again I'm learning as I go along. Like you write it in a way, and with him I feel like he'll read it and say something about a scene that you've written, and then it'll become so obvious to you. It'll become so
Hmm.
apparent that you're like, yeah, like how did I not see this, right?
Hmm.
So it's very small emotional moments, and I think he plays to him. Plot is secondary to him. It's about characters.
Right.
It's about people. He always believes that you don't remember plots of most films. You remember people. You remember
Yeah.
characters. So he will completely, and a lot of times scenes are written in conjunction. Like I would literally be
Hmm.
sitting and he would tell me how he's feeling about a certain uh, sort of beat in the show or in the
Hmm.
film, and then I'll take from there, like okay मेरे को समझ गया आपको क्या चाहिए,
Hmm.
and then like ये पढ़ो.
Hmm.
So it's a very dynamic, interdependent sort of journey, and then finally something comes out which is, you can't pinpoint like, this is my moment, or this is what I wanted. It all gets so mixed up.
Communication is key with the director in that sense, right?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, they have to direct it. तुम लिख के कुछ भी मतलब निकल जाओगे, but like ultimately it has to. So I'll tell you this, that being his DA, being on set and writing simultaneously, I think what in the major way in which it has helped me is economy. Just seeing the journey from page to actual set to what is edited and what comes out, being so close to that journey, witnessing it, makes you just a better writer. Because मतलब क्या unnecessary exposition या information तुम डाल रहे हो, ये नहीं जरूरी है. Like that.
So you're imagining the editing table when you're writing, like how.
I think you have to. I think it just makes your. You really have to think of how it will play out. I mean, it's a visual story. It's not an academic essay that you will put up, right? Like less is always more. Brevity is so important. You feel, I think there's a lot of insecurity within writers where you feel the need to like justify every decision through like a line of dialogue here, to connect all logical journeys, make it very foolproof. I think it comes from a place of overcompensating because you feel that depth is not there. But I think as writers, you also have to be a little fearless about your own ideas and your own beliefs, and also like trust the director that you're working with, that if they get it, then shut up.
I mean, you're talking about brevity, but don't we like appreciate so many of the authors for their indulgences, for the things they do, which are so unnecessary?
But that's the thing, Shubhankar, that will anyway come. I think when they're reading it, they're factoring those indulgences already.
Okay.
Like they know which are the moments where the character, where they will explore a lot more of their voice. Where there will be moments which will be like a bit of a flourish that they want for themselves. And I think it's all very, you can call it indulgences, but for that filmmaker at that time, it's very much a big cog in the wheel for the storytelling, right? I don't think any filmmaker thinks that, oh, this is my indulgent moment.
Okay.
For them, it's their default state of being. Like, this is how I would anyway do it.
The story wouldn't be complete without that.
Yeah. And thank God for that. Otherwise, it will become a very clinical, boring, limited process if you're just, then you don't need a director. Like, I think in Hollywood, there is this concept of director on hire, right? Like, they usually come, shot lagate hain. Matlab, the showrunner is the one in the series.
Right. Every episode has a different...
But the showrunner keeps like the consistency of tone and performances, right? So I think there it's much more meticulous and much more sort of it almost takes away the joy of what you want to do.
There was one thing that I wanted to touch upon with you, which was, you are, like I said, in the metaverse, which is, very recently, the recent phase of metaverse is about the underbelly of the society, or it's the crime space, right? Also satya ghatnaon pe adharit. Most of it is, I mean, I think
almost all of it. Yeah.
So 3 out of 5 projects that you've done with him are, on true instances.
Yeah.
Are you walking a fine line between making a documentary and, on the other hand, we have the glorification of the character that we are seeing in the recent films that are happening, especially the patriotical films that are coming out? Is there do you find yourself to be walking कि मतलब embellishment, थोड़ा तो एक embellishment भी एक art है ना, मतलब चीजों को fiction जैसा treat करना, non-fiction को, that is also an art, right?
No, you're right. A lot of our work has been drawn from incidents and like events that have been real, but like they're obviously like a dramatic retelling of it, like there's no way we're saying that this is a documentary or a biopic. Like a Scoop is not a biopic on like Jigna Vora's life, or journalist. It's like a fictional retelling inspired by the events that she
Hmm.
encountered. And I see that it's getting more and more difficult to do that, because even if you're in a non-political space, it's just an impossible country to win, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody is just waiting to be offended, and like, you know, anybody can file an FIR. And so I think we're trying to move past, you know, like, or tell stories that where the real events or the real episode need to be called as that.
Hmm.
Uh, but I don't think it's ever a struggle. Yeah, documentaries are very different in style, approach, aesthetic,
No,
writing,
I
direction.
remember in one of Hansal's interviews, he said that in certain moments he becomes an observer,
Hmm.
where he's not judging any of the characters, right? So that observation is almost with a documentarian lens, right? You're
Yeah,
looking at wildlife with a camera with a zoom
yeah,
lens. So
yeah.
is that an aesthetic that you have to keep in mind as a writer also, that I don't need to judge these characters in these many scenes?
Not really, yeah. Not at all, I would say. I think, like, obviously the director can have that interpretation, and I'm very sure he must have said it in context of something that he's made.
Hmm.
Uh, because I feel like every film takes a very strong editorial stand. I mean, there is a point of view of the characters in the
Right.
universe of the film, which can be like, a guy can be a toxic, manipulative asshole. But is that also the point of view of the film?
Hmm.
Right? Like, there is a big difference between, like, you can have that person and the movie could condemn his actions very clearly,
Right.
versus the movie sort of like participating in that kind of
Behavior.
behavior, and
Hmm.
almost endorsing it,
Right.
right? Which I think happened a lot in, like, in Sandeep's films. I feel that the films kind of give a slightly more celebratory tinge to, even though it's called Animal and stuff, he's the hero, and, like, you know,
Hmm.
there's certain celebration of machismo that is
Hmm.
unmissable.
Hmm.
It makes it worse when he goes and gives interviews and confirms everything that we believe, right? So
Yeah.
there is no there is no gray area
Yeah.
there. Uh, so I think you're always I don't know, probably Hansel can explain that better, but I think what he also means by the neutral observer is to just sort of let the viewer kind
Hmm.
of, you know, have an interpretation of what is going on,
Yeah.
instead of like talking on their behalf, because
Hmm.
then it goes on the other side and you become like this boring preachy filmmaker,
Hmm.
which nobody wants, like
Hmm.
nobody likes that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So, since we were talking about memorable characters and not memorable plots, there's a very memorable character, Mohammed Samuel from ATN News. I wanted, I wanted to talk to him
man,
about.
I'm thoroughly impressed by the detail of research.
I wanted to talk to Mohammed about his research pedagogy. What does he do? Because, again, you're in the world of true events and based on real events. Again, Hansal was talking about how Jigna was surprised that there were elements that were not even in the book
Huh.
that appeared on in the series.
Yeah.
I'm sure you must be part of that team that must be
Hmm.
researching. And how do you
Yeah.
do that? What is that research method like
Like researching for a movie,
for
for a
for a
show.
film? Yeah, for a show.
I mean, a lot of times it's just like basic stuff, yeah, like police station. You know, like with Scoop, like Karishma and I went to a lot of police stations to just talk to cops,
Hmm.
uh, to get a sense of like what is the world that we're entering. You know, what
Hmm.
is their body language like? What is
Hmm.
conversation like? You know,
Hmm.
so that she doesn't come across completely alien to it. Also, she's a reporter, so she's been in and out of these spaces,
Hmm.
right? So like it was important for us before shooting to put her in those spaces.
By Karishma, you don't mean
And
Karishma Tanna, right? You mean.
Karishma Tanna, yeah,
Acha, okay, okay, okay.
for Scoop. Like
Okay,
I'm
okay.
talking about, if like a research on a show like Scoop
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
entailed us going to police station. A lot of it is like with Scoop, we actually had a very phenomenal researcher called Deepu Sebastian, who was also a journalist.
Okay.
One of the most fantastic journalists. He was with the Indian Express. So he had like a treasure trove of stuff, yeah, like interviews with like former police commissioners, interviews with cops, interviews with sources,
Okay.
to just piece together a story that would be believable and dramatic. You know, it has a lot of like Dawood and Rajan, and it takes all names. So when you're doing that, then you need to also back it with something that they have potentially done. So it's very journalistic in its essence, that you know there will be primary interviews, secondary interviews, going to real places, digging out like case histories, just pointing out, which actually I'm also doing right now while I'm writing something else. It's a lot of fun, yeah, because when you get stuck somewhere creatively, it's a reality that actually comes to your rescue. Because you just feel so blocked, and every idea that you're getting seems a little too like implausible, that ye to nahi hoga. And then you'll research on a case that is similar to what you're writing. You know, like if there's a murder trial and you're stuck in like the kind of conversation the two lawyers are having. And then you pick up any murder trial and you just go through the case history, or like bar and bench will give you like the minutes of how it played out. And the kind of details that emerge out of it would just blow your mind, that, you know, like, arey, yay. And then that gives you the confidence, oh, they can go till this far, so I can write this. Or this is believable because this has happened. So,
because
exactly.
Because I mean, with Scoop, I think you were at home, right? Because with that setup, you've been there, you've done that. But with a story like Faraaz, you must have had to check what happens in Bangladesh, right?
Yeah. Faraaz, we did like, I mean, we again had a book to go by, but like it was a lot of research and like reading up, and I mean, there's a lot of documentation of events like that. So, but the good thing, you know, like sometimes it feels very heavy that बहुत research करना पड़ेगा. अभी लेकिन मेरे को समझ में आया है लिखकर, you know, like you need to research only what is there in the scene. You don't need to know the history of like criminal law in India, and like, you know, how many people are convicted and there's a tendency to think like, you know, to just get like a
that you should know all of these things before you sit down to write,
or to make something about that. You need to only know like what is seen on screen. You know, तो वो काम बहुत contextual और specific हो जाता है. You know, अगर defamation का केस में दो lawyers लड़ रहे हैं, तो मतलब ये argument हो सकता है कि, you know, like if there's an attempt to discredit this character by revealing her sexual history publicly and thereby making her sound like, you know, somebody who is probably like twisting a romantic fling with something else. Then you just need to know if in a case like that, can you make four ex-boyfriends stand, and them saying that, हाँ ये तो stories बहुत बड़ा चढ़ा के बोलती थी, मतलब, you know, ये तो कभी हुआ ही नहीं, मैं तो उससे मिलता नहीं था, she would tell her friends that we had this. And then you would be surprised by the kind of shit that happens in Indian courts. You would be horrified. You talk to people who are locked in the UAPA case in Bhima Koregaon. You know, some of my friends are in prison, and I met them at the Diwali party because two of them were out on bail, and like they are laughing their asses off in prison because of the shit that the government has put in the charge sheet. You know, like the kind of made up rubbish, and like this is gonna be argued, right? Like the Indian judiciary is gonna give time, entertain this. So it's yeah, and there, I mean, one, there is obviously like you're in prison, so that's messed up. But then when you go down to the extent that they're going to keep you locked in, it almost feels like a parody. So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, actually, research.
This was highlighted with Jigna also, right?
Yeah.
The 3 turning into 36.
Yeah, it's what they call a Kafkaesque narrative, right? Like where things just keep ballooning till you don't remember what the main case was really about.
Yeah. Speaking of again Scoop, the article that Zishan Ayub's character writes, that was you?
The editorial.
Yeah.
No. I was not a writer on Scoop.
No, but I thought I had a bet with Akanksha that I said that this voice is very Ankur.
No, there's this guy who's absolutely brilliant, and I mean, I love spending time with him. We meet very less, but he's very funny. This guy called Mirat Trivedi.
Okay.
He's done a bunch of stuff. So,
Okay.
I mean, I obviously like made it more editorially in terms of, you know, like stuff that could be actually
In
the
a
paper.
yeah.
But the commentary and the point of view that was coming through, and also like Zishan's character being like the moral compass of the universe.
Yeah.
And that editorial sort of crystallizes everything that's wrong with it. No, I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It's one of the highlights. So Gemini's performance that we discussed last time, and that editorial was the highlight for me.
You all had a thing with Gemini. Did that go through? Did you all do it?
We approached him. He was busy with his workshop, so hopefully something will materialize this month. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Anyway, so one last thing about Scoop before I move on, which is, did you get the interview with the director of Pyar Ka Panchnama?
Is it there in the final cut?
Yeah, it is just a little throwaway line.
There was a lot. It was all improvised. You know, I felt we made the newsroom. And I was really missing like newsrooms. So, and then there was the scene where there is like the whole editorial team and the editors like taking everyone to task कि तुम्हारे पास क्या है. तो फिर मेरे को तभी strike हो कि entertainment reporter तो होना चाहिए. So
exactly.
Sir, and I'm like, he's like, so खड़े हो जा, like get him his costume, whatever, fix your story. So it was one of those just fun moments of improvising.
But since we are on that topic of newsrooms, you said that having worked in a high-pressure newsroom across the spectrum of media, I am accustomed to functioning under highly stressful circumstances.
Nonsense. I never said this, Shubhankar. I'm disputing this. This chat GPT generated LinkedIn profile that you created for me.
This is your LinkedIn profile, not mine. But
somebody else made it, I guess.
So highly stressful circumstances. I'm sure you are adept to them in the different circumstances as a journalist, as a DA.
Yeah, you're not asking me more about like journalism side of things because that's like the bulk of work.
Do you want me to?
I mean, I would have more also to talk about it, but like depending on whatever you are also interested in knowing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in knowing about you in general. I mean, there's nothing like. I mean, I was interviewing you in the capacity of a screenwriter and DA. That's why. There's no.
I mean, I think it's just me. I feel sometimes a little. You know, like you're still learning the tropes. So how do you like talk like somebody with insight? You know, like. With journalism, you feel like more authority.
Are you experiencing imposter syndrome?
I am always experiencing imposter syndrome. I'm always deeply. I don't even think it's possible to shake it off. Like sometimes I'll submit a draft and I will just not read it because I'm like, मैंने लिखा है, पता नहीं क्या है. तो फिर अच्छा लगता है तो खुशी नहीं होती, बुरा लगता है तो लगता है कि यार तुमको कुछ नहीं आता है. तो वो.
But how are you dealing with imposter syndrome at 31 compared to 21? Or is it the same?
But I didn't have any imposter syndrome at 21. That's what I learned. I mean, one of the big learnings is like the older you grow, sometimes you marvel at the confidence you had earlier.
You wish you had it now.
Yeah, you were like, I mean, when I was covering these festivals and watching, I remember I interviewed Sean Baker, who's directed, in 2012 when he made this film called Babe. And like beautiful Convivial Lucano by the lake, took a walk. It was
wow.
And nobody fucking knew that he's going to break through in such a big way. He was just a very, very sensible, very smart guy.
Yeah.
But मुझे लगता है कि मेरे को क्या पता था यार 21 I was not even 21 2012 I would be 20 19 I'm 93 so 19 what the fuck did I know what I had read a lot of like cinema stuff watched but to have like a sharp perspective on things or like to talk to like you know like who's that actor Gail Garcia Bernal he was there I interviewed him
okay I don't know
he's the He's Mozart in the Jungle and all
Okay.
those. So, I mean, once you Google him, you'll know.
Okay,
He's in
okay.
Motorcycle Diaries. I think that's
Okay.
his big.
Okay.
He plays Che.
Okay.
So I am amused to just answer your question that the imposter syndrome came in, I guess, after the transition, like till HuffPost and like the journalism work, there was a lot of confidence. And then I guess when you change your career at the age that I did and begin from scratch, then I guess I have to remind myself that this, like, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's okay if it takes time for you to only believe that.
But the
That's
change
something
was
that
not something that happened. I mean, it was a very conscious thought choice that you wanted to go through it for the longest time, right? You've always dreamt of making films, right?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, Shubhankar, what happens, and I'm sure it happens with a lot of people, is that, see, you want to be a lot of things, and then like a certain thing works for you and like makes you feel very good. I think the days that, like, the time that HuffPost India existed,
Yeah.
were some of the most satisfying professional years of my life. Like, it felt like a dream in terms of what we were able to achieve being a really small team of 10 people.
Oh.
That the kind of investigation that happened, like in the IT cell, in electoral bonds, in the environment policy, which was twisted by the current government, or the Me Too reportage that I did. I felt exceptionally proud that we put out this work in that little time, and given all the constraints that media has, right? And of course the profiles that you spoke of. So then you get comfortable in a certain role, and you're not necessarily like, you're thinking, हाँ picture अगर बनानी है तो मतलब, when it happens. That sort of a complacency comes in. So it was only when HuffPost shut down, which was in November 2020, November 2020, COVID year, is when you're like, oh, now what am I going to do? Right? So I actually have to thank the government for shutting us down. Because it accelerated.
At that point, you could have still been in the same industry or joined some other publication or done something else.
That's the thing. If you look at, not to sound self-aggrandizing at all, but if you just look at the kind of reporting or the writing that a HuffPost would do, also see, there's a big difference. We were a well-funded, independent organization in India, right? Like most of the very good organizations who do like spectacular reporting now, whether it's the News Minute or the Wire or Scroll, whatever, in small organizations are left, like the big problem is money, right? We were like fully America, like owned by Verizon, so it was like best of both the worlds. So now, to answer your question, the problem was once it shut, I didn't know where I would get that freedom, because like a lot of pieces about Bollywood also were very critical. They were about the politicization. They were about, how Bollywood is being co-opted by the government to like advance a certain ideological agenda. All of that we were able to document because it was important that somebody write about this connection. It's not coincidental that these films are getting made one by one. Right? There is a certain machinery in place that's enabling and incentivizing making these kind of hate-fueled films. So a lot of work in that, like talking to people. Basically, like I think one of the stories that I most was proud of was about like how does this happen, right? Like, and I'll send a link of the piece to you. कि कोई तो डिसीजन ले रहा है, कोई पैसे कहीं से कहीं जा रहे हैं, फ्लाइट्स उड़ रही हैं, चार्टर प्लेन्स भेजे जा रहे हैं, उसमें एक्टर्स घुस रहे हैं, like that selfie is not an organic burst of like spontaneous camaraderie between the Prime Minister and Bollywood stars, right? There is a task force which makes sure that it gets clicked, it gets posted at a certain time, and that's all that you're seeing on the timeline. So like, I mean, it was exciting work. As a journalist, like me and a very close friend of mine who works for the NPR has this joke that you don't want to be a journalist in a country where there is, complete freedom of press. Usme kya maza hai? Like there's nothing at stake. When there is so much at stake, I mean, and that's just a joke. Of course, we should aspire to have as much freedom. And there are
Yeah.
people who have literally been murdered for reporting, like was the case with the reporter in Chhattisgarh.
Hmm.
But it's kind of like saying that a lot of filmmakers thrive when they are absolutely constrained, like the way how Iranian cinema emerged out of like a theocratic state not allowing them to say things.
Hmm.
So it compels you to think more originally and come up with like uh, ideas that sort of tackle oppression in a
I
very
think that
creative
general
way.
political philosophy that when there is a friction or when there is a kind of suppression is when art will burst out. And
I mean, but sure, yeah, but I don't think I think it's misconstrued as being a prerequisite, which
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
it
it
isn't.
is not. Yeah.
It's not, and it's not even an ideal scenario. It's the
Hmm.
worst case scenario.
Hmm.
But yeah, it can lead to great art. It's kind of
Hmm.
like the whole Imtiaz Ali philosophy of टूटे हुए दिल से संगीत निकलता है.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Like
a
what you were saying
cautionary
that
tale.
you came from a woke family, you too with like you didn't have the struggle
Yeah,
that you
yeah, it's a
wanted.
very Jordan way of saying things, no?
Yeah.
But no, those I don't think those conditions are ideal for creativity. I think creativity needs stability. It needs peace of mind. It needs, to me, romantic fulfillment is very important for like me to remain creative. I think with a broken heart, I wouldn't get anything done. To
Anything worth.
spiral into
Yeah.
self pity,
Yeah.
I don't think any great art is coming out of my broken heart for sure. So, so I am absolutely terrified of that happening.
So with you, I feel that I mean, if I were to look at your, if I were to guess your taste in music, in films, it
Hmm.
would be something which are like, perhaps the romantic films, like the La La
Yeah,
Land or the Titanic. But then
yeah,
I find you working with Hansal Mehta, which is not
yeah,
necessarily known for its romance.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but are those reflections of the same person, two personalities of the same person?
Have, yeah, I think both can obviously coexist, be possible together. I keep telling Hansel sir that I think he's an achingly romantic filmmaker. He needs. I think Modern Love was an attempt because I think it's also a very beautiful looking shot.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
about Bombay and Goa. And there's songs constantly. There's songs like
Hmm.
every 5-6 minutes there is a
Yeah.
Thumri or there is an Ali Saidi song. Uh, but I don't know, yeah, we just gravitated. It's also the time, like I said, when HuffPost start. It's all very logical, यार. What happened is मेरा सिंपल था मैं मतलब अब दुकान बंद हो गई and I am somebody and I tell my partner this that whenever it's like okay this is not happening I cannot go into a spiral of victimhood like अरे यार गलत हो गया अरे fuck how can
Hmm.
they do this and like feel bad about yourself, right?
Yeah.
I'm like okay here's a chance now, what cool things can we like do. This is chat. What do I want to do? Like, is this an opportunity for me to like break away from the work that I've been doing and
Yeah.
start something afresh, or I could probably get an editorial level position in one of the bigger platforms. And obviously, there were people who wanted to talk about that, and
Yeah.
very good money, right? Like with like those TV channels, websites, and stuff. You've done like X number of work. It's very comfortable. कुछ नहीं करना है. You're not even at like war with the film industry. You have to write like something that is more you know of a hagiography about like the industry at large. But I just picked up the phone. I'll tell you exactly what happened if you're interested in knowing.
Yes.
This shuts down and I'm like अब मैं क्या करूँगा लाइफ के साथ. Luckily HuffPost, because they didn't want to like shut shop, right? Like the current government introduced FDI laws which made HuffPost an illegal entity in India.
Oh.
They changed their digital laws. Basically, what they said is that if you're a foreign publication operating in India, then 70% of the stake should be India owned.
Okay.
You need an
But they were
India
American.
partner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if somebody is a 70% India partner, they are basically your owners,
The owner.
right? And if they are your owners, then obviously the Indian government can arm twist them for various other
Ways.
things.
Yeah.
So it's very clever, right? That's what I say about
Hmm.
this government. They don't do anything illegal.
Hmm.
They just legalize the stuff that they want done.
Yeah.
And then you become the problem.
Yeah.
So what happened in that case, because they didn't shut down on their own, we were decently compensated for the next few months. There was severance. So I think it made a world of a difference, instead of worrying about यार अभी कल मेरे को नौकरी ढूंढनी है, अब ऐसा है कि तुम्हारे पास 1 साल है सोचने के लिए करना क्या है ना, और तुम 27 के हो 28 के हो, that's a good age to like pivot. You've done one phase of your career is done. Now where do you use your experiences as a journalist and kind of make something more out of it? So I would not also like cut away from like storytelling, right? Like journalism is also storytelling, as is filmmaking. The difference is one of them is fiction. Today you don't know which one is fiction actually. It could very well be journalism. So then I called this person who actually I would keep in touch with. I think she's like a brilliant, she's a media executive, Aparna Purohit, who at the time headed Amazon. Amazon Prime Video, and I told her like this has happened, and what do you think? Like, I think I could be good use in a studio environment, like creative development or putting up projects together and stuff. And she's like, yeah, we can meet, we can talk, and then we're talking and stuff. We met socially and spoken on phone for several times. So she didn't know how old I was. So बातों में निकला कि तुम कितने साल के हो, तुम लगा कि अभी 28 का हो जाऊंगा. So then she's like, you should not be seen near a studio. If you want to be a filmmaker, director eventually, be on a fucking set. That is where you need to be. मतलब 27 के टाइम में क्या तुमको executive बन के घूमना और क्या feedback देना है? तो ये करो. And I can't tell you, because when you're a journalist, and I see this with my other journalism friends, like you're obviously very open because of the work you do, but in a way you don't look at certain areas of work as a possibility. Because you've been trained into a very salaried existence that has salaried jobs. So it could be a creative job, but like salary आती है और तरीका है करने का. अब like मतलब film set पे मैं बहुत film set पे as a reporter गया था, but I would go to meet the star, I would go to meet the director, right? Like nobody's interviewing ADs or like costume designers or DOPs. I mean, even now it happens very little. So I would be in vans and stuff, so I had a very cursory understanding of what goes. And like an AD is a ball-busting,
job.
very labor-intensive job. It's also very adrenaline pumping, but ultimately you're a majdoor on set. You're like running around constantly. You're never sitting. You're just making
16 hours or 15 hours work days.
Yeah, luckily with Hansal, he's very particular to not have those obscene hours. Like, picture bana rahe ho, chill. So we have like 12 hours, which is the norm even in the other film industry in the US, UK. We wrap within 12 hours. So then that opened like Aparna kind of nudging me in that direction. So I'm like, so then she's like, Vishal is making a show for us. At the time, Vishal was doing something for them. This Kabir is making a show for us. So like, let me put you in touch with them. You meet them and you join the crew. So I'm like, okay. Zoya is making something. Zoya was making Made in Heaven 2. Vishal was making, I think, a Kandahar show which didn't happen. Kabir, I think, was making Forgotten Army. ऐसा कुछ तो भी था.
Yeah.
और अनुराग कुछ और. तो फिर मेरे को फिर स्ट्राइक हुआ ये करते, तो मैंने लिस्ट बनाई. अभी भी कहीं एक डायरी में होगी, I'll send you a picture. So I instinctively, so then I felt that okay, there's a direction. This is what I could do. Now let me make a list of people I really love, and whose films have influenced me, and I want to work with them. And instinctively, the first name on the list was Hansal. I think it might also be subconsciously it came because Scam had released in October 2020. In November, this thing Half Post shut.
So he was very hot at the time.
I kind of felt like this is his 100 crore hit. Which the kind of mad commercial successes his films have not had. This is that, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, everybody loved it. I think that year 2 people blew up. There was Pratik Gandhi and there was
Hansal Mehta.
For Scam and this guy. Jaideep Elawat,
Right. Patal.
right, for Patal Lok.
Yeah.
So when you suddenly felt that, oh my god, streaming is finally putting a spotlight on actual stars.
Yeah.
These people need to be
Yeah.
stars because it's
Hmm.
backed by acting talent. Hansal was everywhere. There was some GQ party event, something where I met him. And then I figured what happened. So I obviously texted him. He was on a bit of a break. I think Scam or Chalang उन्होंने बनाई थी. So he was in
Yes.
Assam. He was on Anubhav set. Anubhav was making that Northeast movie that he made. What was it called? Anek.
Anek. Yes. NE. Yeah.
So, yeah. So Hansal was somewhere in Northeast and I was like, मतलब मैं उनको जानता था वो मैं बहुत मतलब I had also written stuff about him which wasn't flattering. So at the time I just sent messages to everyone, including Hansal. I sent to Zoya, Anurag, whoever like I was close to or I knew socially. I don't think I was close to anybody. Vishal. And everybody was very, very nice. Everybody was very sympathetic that, HuffPost is something that they followed. They loved reading. It's shut. And they were like, let's meet, let's figure out. What happened was everybody was in the middle of stuff they were making. They were shooting,
already,
they were in post. Hansal was in that sweet spot where Scam was a big hit and he was figuring what to do.
Yeah.
So that made us like, it's like you're starting something new. Faraaz was still being written.
Yeah.
So then I went, met him in his house in Bandra and he's like, कुछ नहीं कर रहा तो just join me. I'm like, join you क्या? मेरे को कुछ आता नहीं है करना मतलब मैं ऐसे बड़ी मतलब कमेंट्री लिखता हूँ फिल्मों के बारे में on like how whatever like visually it left me underwhelmed and all of that but I don't know jack shit. So he's like, नहीं देखो आता है, he just comes. So it was just that, it was because he was free and available and like thought that I had some potential in a way that could help his storytelling. And I met everybody actually. Everybody met and they were like, let's 2-3 महीने में जैसे ही Made in Heaven खत्म होगा, like let's talk.
We'll do something, yeah.
And I don't think anybody was disingenuous because I mean they knew me.
They would have helped you out for sure.
They will help me out. They'll tell me कि अभी कुछ हो नहीं रहा है यार तो like.
Right.
So that decision was big, yeah. That was. It's like going to school on day one. You're terrified.
And now, I mean, 5 or 6 projects in. Are you turning jaded? Is there like a bit of like because these hours are cumbersome, right? I mean the job is kind of like it's heavy, right? Emotionally, physically.
But it's very, very rewarding here. It's extremely, and I think most days when I'm headed to work or set, I just feel very, very lucky that I get to do this. मतलब मेरे को इतना मजा आता है सेट पे मैं I can't tell you. I think you have to be on set or if you talk to other people on set. And I think a huge part of it is Hansal. Because I think like if there is Kalesh happening on set or if Kali Galoj, it's always top down.
Yeah.
If you have a temperamental director, then every department is fucked in the head. Because everybody's passing on their anxiety and like he is extremely very, I mean, I'm sure you must have spoken to him. He's very...
To who, Hansal? No, not No. But I've read up enough. I know. You praised him
He's
publicly.
Very composed and like at ease and like he hates if people shout on set. Like you'll get yelled at if you shout at somebody. So maybe my experience is limited to being on a set. I've heard most sets are very toxic. A lot of sets are very like agonizing.
Yes.
The hours are long, people are very rude and they don't talk to you well. Hierarchies and whatnot, and like production is a mess sometimes. You're always running against time. You never have enough budgets. So that way I feel that I got supremely lucked out, and the last 5 years it
feel like that.
Yeah. To me they feel like film school, going to a film school and learning the tropes.
So what have you learned? One thing that probably stands out as a learning for you?
From a set specifically?
Yeah. The film school that you're attending.
And there are like several things that, that will probably influence whenever I do get the opportunity to direct. It will reflect on it, but I think to me it's relationships and people management. I think half the work of a director is just
People management.
you just need. Of course, you have a directorial vision. You just need the right people, and I don't even mean the most talented people. I'll tell you, that has been my learning. That sometimes the most times, and then you realize why an ex-director works with an ex-actor so much. Because, like, sometimes it's not, even when we reach like a casting conversation, like, talent, a lot of people are talented, you're just kind of filtering out people who are going to make your life miserable. You're like, यार ये बहुत अच्छा actor है, लेकिन he's gonna fuck us up. No. Like, those decisions are critical. We've eliminated so many times. We've eliminated good actors. We were like assholes. Can't deal
On
with
this topic, I mean, I remember
them. You mind if I eat like a toast? That's okay, right?
Of course, yeah. You go ahead, do whatever you want. Jeremy Strong, the Succession guy.
Yeah, I read that piece. Yeah.
Yeah, so you read the piece, right? So exceptionally difficult person to work with, but a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
Is there a certain payoff to that? I mean, I know you just said that you're saying no to good actors, but maybe say you were to independently make your own first film, which we'll get to later on. But would you cast would you see that as a trade-off?
A known asshole ever.
Okay.
Ever, because I mean, whenever I do get the chance to direct, if I do get the chance to direct, I will have to fight for control and assertion. And you will mostly be surrounded by people who are much superior to you in terms of experience, right? In every department. Because you'll be making it for the first time, but you'll work with people who've done this like 100 times. And I mean, this is purely from like my reporting background. The amount of power that a male superstar has on a Bollywood set it's terrifying. Like, nobody should have that kind of unchecked power. Like, everything fucking works around your whims and fancy. Like, they could be shooting in a fucking desert in like the dunes of Rajasthan and demand a cheeseburger, and somebody will have to get it. So I think it'll fuck me up if I know, and of course like who are the stars who are unbearable. But also depends. It would be unbearable to me. If like Bhansali is working with them, then I mean, they have to worry about it.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, man. People management, I think, is key. Of course, your instincts is a storytelling, but I don't think you can learn that. You can train and sharpen them. वो तो होगा ही, otherwise you're not. I'm saying beyond that, just how you're able to negotiate the minefield of like egos clashing. In a film set is a particularly ripe area or a space for conflict.
Also, actors by virtue of their work.
Yeah, and this element of narcissism you can't take it out, right? That exists. Other people also, it's not just actors. It could be your DOP, it could be the costume, for the person in the costume. I mean, they're all, in most cases, like really accomplished people, right? Like probably, I mean, they've done films and you weren't even fucking born, right? Like, so I know that shouldn't create an invisible hierarchy, but that tendency comes in, right? Like, man, tumko kya pata hai?
Like that.
So yeah, I mean that could happen. So I'm saying that if a director gets caught up in that, then your film's fucked. So
what do you I mean, since I am a theatre actor, we usually tend to define acting as actors as either thinking actors or non-thinking actors, in the sense that some actors will want to go into the depths of it, try to understand the psychological implications of it, and then there are other actors who are little, who act like sheep, who you can just herd them into the direction you want them to go.
And then there's a third actor who's just like naturally gifted, doesn't give a fuck about some
Yeah.
process and backstory and future
Yeah.
stories, and will be doing gup 1 minute, and once the shot
Switch
is on,
off.
that's fucking Kareena Kapoor Khan. She's a goddess. She कुछ ये सब जो तुम बात कर रहे हो ना, backstory and like her internal
Yeah.
thing. She reads, she does whatever she does, internalizes. And like when the camera's on, like sometimes when we did the Buckingham murders, I mean, she's a grieving mother there, right?
Yeah.
Like who's going through like unspeakable loss. And I have to be like, how? She was just like doing gup like 2 seconds ago, and suddenly there is this really heartfelt, moving performance where you're like, it's almost gut wrenching, in certain scenes. So I'm like, that's a true star for me. That is stardom. That is aura.
That's also experience,
skills.
right?
But she's always been apparently like that. And then there are actors, मतलब छोटे पार्ट्स के लिए एक एक्टर मेरे पास आया था, क्योंकि बहुत एक्टर्स मतलब डायरेक्टर से डरते भी है ना कि कुछ बेवकूफ सवाल पूछा तो लाइक आई जज, so I become that person कि यार मुझे ये था. So one actor I remember came and I was very pissed that day because a lot of shit was going crazy, and he kept hounding me कि उसके डायलॉग में वो बोलता है मेरे दादा कहते थे, ऐसा कुछ था उसका डायलॉग, दादा समथिंग. so then he asked me मेरे दादा करते क्या थे. I'm like I'm like, why the fuck do you want to know? What is that detail going to change in your life? And like, how a performance that's dead will suddenly become sparkling because your dada was a cobbler. So then I'm like, I don't know. What did you think he did?
That's what
character
he did.
is about interpretation.
Yeah.
So then he went on this spiel about, I think this trauma comes, and something long monologue he gave. So I'm like, don't say it, show it. No, I just yelled at him. And he got very scared. Kya bol? He's like, yeah, okay, fine. So I don't know. I'm nobody to judge some actor's process, whatever. I'm sure it helps them, right? I'm sure Jeremy Strong. I like what Brian Cox told Jeremy Strong, like, just fucking act.
Act, yeah. When will you start acting? Yeah. Yeah.
But listen, it's very, very hard what they do. It's exceptionally drains. It's emotionally very draining, and they're constantly anxious. And I mean, I am full of self-doubt, like you pointed out. They are worse.
Yeah.
I mean, you see every actor after a take, you see they're just searching for the note of validation in the eyes of the director.
Yeah.
कि कुछ बोल दो. And most directors, like, I mean, like, in the case of Hansal, he's not somebody who's like, oh my god, brilliant, bang. He'll move on.
Yeah, they'll not entertain your...
Yeah, if he's not happy, then you'll do it as many times as it takes. But if you've done a good job, then you move on. So then, like, people are like, oh shit, do I know how to do this? Did I do it right?
In theatre, we say that if you've moved on to the next scene, you've done a good job.
There you go, yeah.
That is your praise. That you're not scolded is your praise.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, last 2 questions. What's the hardest scene you've had to write or direct? I mean, on set.
Yeah, I don't think it's one of those things that you can answer like as one scene. Like Gandhi's being made, it's logistically an extremely complicated show that has been filmed across like, Bombay and London and other obscure parts of England. So there were many moments where like the weather was very, very challenging.
So it's the outdoor shoots that get you.
Outdoor shoots are a little unpredictable, but obviously a lot more fun because you're just seeing like really stunning places which you wouldn't go to ever.
But then it's England, so you don't know when it's going to rain.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my final question, which is, and I've been giving this magic wand to a lot of my guests. So I give you the magic wand.
Manifest stuff here.
Yeah. So we
My
manifest
God.
stuff here. But this is the best because there are no restrictions absolutely at all. No budgetary restrictions. Everything is possible. Every genre is possible.
Wow.
And you are at the director's seat. What is the film that you're making?
God, yeah, Shumankar. It's obviously a fantasy film because it's not real. I think I would love to make a musical.
Of
Like,
course.
my dream film is, and like by musical I mean say like a very successful Desi musical. I think an Om Shanti Om is a good example.
Yeah.
You know, it is genuinely, it has the aesthetic and the style of a musical where like a lot of storytelling happens through songs.
Yeah.
So that is that is the dream. I think I have a bare bones story,
Acha.
and once my existing commitments are done, I'm
Mhm.
like it's gonna be like,
You're also
Full-
adapting Billions, right? By the way.
no, I don't know where that came from, man. That's such a random article.
Yeah. That's not
That's a
true.
show that's being developed, but it has
Nothing to do with Billions.
I think it's one of those unofficial leaks which has
Mhm.
incorrect information.
Mhm.
It's not Billions, man, and Billions is a very scary show to adapt.
Okay, so yeah, of course, coming back to your dream, which is a
Yeah, I want
musical.
like this. Yeah, like big. I mean, I wouldn't say big budget, but big in scale musical.
It's the kind of film that you would want to go to a theater and watch.
Yeah, I want like a sweeping romantic epic. You know, that's what I'm hopefully working towards. I want to direct by, I don't know, these things you say and then like 2 years
Manifest.
later I'll only see and laugh कि मैं क्या सोचा था, but बोलने में क्या जाता है? ये क्या 2025 है, so 27 I hope I'm in a place that somebody trusts me enough to like give some money to direct. I would love that, man.
Well, I'm really looking forward, Ankur, and thank you so much for doing this. I mean, I've adequately wasted a lot of your time. Do you have any feedback for me?
No, I mean, I think it was great. You're like a really cool, patient listener, and I think what I sense is you actually derive joy out of
Yes.
listening. It's not, you know, and understanding and sort of like getting a window into some other person's life. I think joy is important to work.
Yeah.
Like if it's not giving you happiness, I mean, I don't know. People should constantly chase that. You know, it has to give you a high, no matter the hurdles on the way.
Yeah, exactly.
There has to be this euphoric feeling that like, fuck, I get to do this.
Then it doesn't matter how difficult or how.
हाँ, जब हम लंदन में शूट करते हैं मुझे वो फीलिंग बहुत आती है. Yeah, because.
Yeah, speaking of London, by the way, I mean, we didn't get to it, but.
Yeah, you studied there?
No, not at all. I just visited. I've just visited twice. And second time I visited, I stayed there for a week with my wife. So I'm absolutely in love. Also because, you know, theater. So I
West End and the theater.
Yeah, so I stayed next to the Globe. I made my
Wow.
Yeah. So I made my.
You got like an
daily.
Airbnb near like
Yeah,
South
no.
Bank?
It was a South Bank. Mein there's a service apartment. So right, just the lane behind Globe. अभी वहाँ
I
पे
love that stretch. I love
Oh, it's
that.
beautiful. अभी यहाँ Hollywood की film भी shoot हुई है with Cameron Diaz, I think. There was
Black Doves जो Netflix पे है उसमें वो पूरा stretch है.
वो the
First
entire
episode.
stretch is there. Yeah. So Akanksha and I were tripping over how we used to walk over the bridge, and that was the Starbucks that we used to go to.
Oh, London makes me cry, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go back.
Yeah. I mean, I keep telling Akanksha that we need to go back again. And you've been like going to all these dreamy places which are just unreal. I'm so jealous. So
last year was actually very travel intense.
So you're going to these places on your own, or is this some sort of a recce, or you're going there for inspiration?
Well, यार inspiration के लिए तो मतलब, I mean, if you take a trip with your, then inspiration could be a byproduct of it. But no, last year we did spend a lot of time, you know, like I think England was a big part of like the recce process. So we did spend a lot of times in really stunning pockets, which are not even like, I mean, they're not going to be on an itinerary.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not for tourism. So, and then I think last month, again, after filming and everything, I went back to London just to hang. And then, like, I was just in Europe for a few weeks because it was a very, very, very exhausting year. So probably you saw pictures from there. I was in Prague in Austria for some time.
Yeah.
My girlfriend. So,
wow.
So, yeah, man.
So now are you adequately rejuvenated? Ready to...
Nothing you can ever, man.
It's never sufficient.
It's never sufficient. Then I think I have this radical take that part should be the main part of life and everything else is done to achieve that. So, like, I'm very ambitious, but I'm not like in a hurry. I'm like, it will fall in place, and you know, it's great to be young and be traveling, man.
Yeah. Smell the flowers along the way.
Yeah, and all of that inevitably find their way into like your writing process, into your creativity, right? It's not divorced from it.
It keeps churning in the subconscious, I think.
Fully, yeah. Hopefully more travels this year, man.
Well, great. Good to hear that, Ankur. And thank you again for taking out time from your very busy, very difficult schedule.
I'm sorry for the back and forth.
No, I'm sorry for bothering you for so long, and thank you for succumbing to my...
something out of it.
Yes, I got a lot out of it, and I'm going to cherish this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ankur.
Please, if at all you're in Bombay and I'm here at the same time, please let's definitely meet.
Yes.
Have a cup of coffee or something.
Yes. Would love that.
Good to see you here.
Yes, Ankur. Thank you so much, Ankur. If you learned something new from this episode of the Horsemouth podcast, do rate and review us on Spotify, Instagram, X, or wherever people engage with you the most.